What was your biggest why didn't anyone tell me about this sooner moment? Graphic designer. 5 years of college and 1 year into the workforce and someone shows me the Pathfinder tool in Illustrator. FFS. I was suffering from conjunctivitis for almost 10 years. I was told by a couple of doctors that it was because of my allergies. So I would stop wearing contacts, treat my eyes with antibiotics drops or gel. My eyes would get better, so I started putting my contacts again. A couple of weeks or months later, another conjunctivitis. Treat them again, etc. etc. Finally, a new doctor looked at my eyes for 10 seconds and told me that I was probably allergic to my contact lenses solution and eye drops. I just changed the solution for the one with peroxide in it, and since then no more conjunctivitis. Someone should have told me this a long time ago, or I should have figured it out. How to use public transportation. Kid from rural Alaska joins the military, stationed in Southern California. Got on the bus to go off base into town. Finish walking around and go back to the bus station to get back on base. Kid doesn't pay attention to what's going on. Ends up lost in San Diego. Conclusion: the numbers on buses mean things. I love this. Reddit. I've spent a long time on the internet, but only discovered Reddit by accident while looking up a question. I discovered an entire sub and many others. It's amazing and I've been hooked since. When you said Reddit, I actually thought you were going to follow up with what a time sink it is and why did nobody warn you to stay away. Glasses. I was failing most of my class in a 6th grade because I couldn't see the board and was too nervous, since I was a new kid, to ask to be moved to the front. My life transformed and my grades got better. I thought everyone couldn't see, but it was just me. Can relate here. First time I wore glasses, I was smiling like an idiot, because everything looked so clear for the first time in years. Took me many times of getting into trouble at school for not doing my work, before I admitted I couldn't actually see what was on the board. Coconut oil. I have been struggling with really dry, flaky skin on my face. Think light version psoriasis. I tried a lot of expensive ointments, including various prescription drugs. A colleague told me I should try coconut oil, literally the stuff you use for cooking, but I dismissed it due to his overall alternative medicine tendencies. On a whim I bought a jar, because I saw a bunch of it stacked by the counter. I put some on in the evening, and I woke up with perfectly smooth and nice looking skin the next morning. It's been around a year, and I've spent roughly $1 worth of coconut oil to have a normal looking face, applying a small amount every evening. Pours coconut oil over entire life. Moved out of my childhood home with a double oven into my own, which has a single oven with a broiler. Oh, thought I. A drawer for pans. 4 years later, my friend helping me in the kitchen finished off garlic bread in there and blew my mind. In middle school, we had a separate math book for fractions. It just tried to learn all these rules on how they work and they never made sense to me. 2 years later, first year of high school, a math teacher says fractions are just divisions. Suddenly, fractions made a lot more sense because I knew what they actually represented. Still want to slap whoever made that middle school fractions book, which made it way more complicated than it had to be. To this day I don't know why they would ignore the most important thing about fractions. Fractions make sense if you used measuring cups for cooking when you were a kid. Cook with your kids and make half batches of things for maximum math. I pronounced the silent P in everything pewphone, raspberry, until high school, and for some reason nobody ever corrected me. I'm pursuing the psychiatry training program now, and I'm worried someday I'll say psychiatry in front of my colleagues. My last name has a silent P and my favorite people were the ones who pronounced it. That people normally take their bra off at home and when they go to sleep. I used to only take mine off when changing or showering or something up until like the 10th grade. I've basically stopped wearing bras whenever I can get away with it. They're evil, and my breasts aren't that big. Board games are awesome. I used to think board games were pretty lame. Monopoly, Risk, etc. But there's actually a whole bunch of board games out there that aren't. It started with Catan, and now I'm in my 5th Lantern year in Kingdom Death Monster. I wish someone would have told me sooner. Also, having a steady gaming group really helps. was in the hospital for a stem cell transplant, being absolutely miserable during chemo and surviving on ice water and popsicles because hospital food is gross. Even the call to order special stuff I could get. Second to last day I was there, one of the nurses mentioned, you can order literally anything you want and we will make it right. Butter noodles, a quesadilla, whatever, as long as we have in the ingredients we can make it. Meanwhile, I've been struggling with gross soup, mashed potatoes, and the worst scrambled eggs, thinking my only options were the gourmet dishes listed on the menu. I pass that info along now to everyone I meet going in. If they messed up scrambled eggs, I wouldn't have a lot of hope they could make something I'd want to eat. I grew up a sickly child. When I was a baby toddler, my parents would discover me with blue lips and they'd rush me to the ER for a breathing treatment. I would get sick often, and if I got a chest cold I had it for weeks. I would be so sick, I'd have to sleep sitting up because I'd cough too much to lay down, and also I wouldn't be able to get enough O2 in my lungs. When I was in grade school, I was so amazed that all the other kids would keep running even though their lungs were on fire. Turns out, only my lungs were on fire. In my senior year of high school, I got extremely sick for 4 months. I was so sick that I'd have to walk at a very slow pace, and I'd have to pause halfway up a flight of 13 stairs to get to my high school's entrance. On my 4th visit to the doctor, I was diagnosed with bronchitis. I was prescribed oral steroids, antibiotics, and an inhaler. It changed my life. Now I just recognize how it feels and tell the doc that I have bronchitis, and she listens to my lungs and gives me the drugs I need to heal me. Finally, when I was 24, I was diagnosed with allergies. I now take a metric fuck ton of allergy meds, but I can breathe. I've only had bronchitis twice since then, nearly 2 decades. Something similar happened to me, too. I had no idea why other kids were able to still breathe when exercising, or how the whistling sound in their nose didn't drive them insane, or how people wouldn't feel on like their throat was closing around smoke, or how they didn't laugh until they were coughing so hard they can't catch a breath. I was diagnosed with asthma at 19. I recently found out that you can put your Hawaiian king rolls in the oven to bake them a little. It never crossed my mind because I've been eating it straight out the bag my whole life. They taste 100x better now. Make French toast with sliced king's Hawaiian. Trust me. That just because your parents provide for you and give you everything you want doesn't make them good parents or incapable of ever abusing you in any way. To add to this, meeting the minimum requirements of childcare doesn't mean you did a good job, it just means you can't charge with child neglect. You never went hungry doesn't excuse you from other forms of abuse. That raisins were fricking grapes. Took me too many years to learn that. All those years I thought they were a weird type of alien grain or nut until I learned in a social humiliating way at a baptism. For my entire childhood, my father was incredibly stingy about heating and air conditioning. He'd always tell us we were spoiled and should dress warmer, colder and or toughen up rather than using energy for heating air conditioning. Then, when I was in my early 20s, he started getting really weird about air conditioning. It would be turned up full blast all the time, and if I set the thermostat to a warmer temperature or even just mentioned that it doesn't need to be so cold, he'd scold me and tell me to put on a sweater, and this was on extremely hot summer days. He was still as stingy as ever about heat, but had become completely. I just wrote it off my father being weird, moved out of my parents' house soon afterwards, and didn't give much thought to the whole thing apart from repeating it as an anecdote in conversations about parents being weird. Fast forward a decade, I'm now in my 30s, filling out a family medical history for a new doctor, who asks me at what age my mother reached menopause. I don't know, so I ask my mother, and she said in her early 50s, which is right when my father started getting weird about air conditioning. Back in my early 20s, I knew menopause was a thing. I knew hot flashes were a symptom, but I hadn't put any thought or research into what age it happened. My grandmothers had reached menopause before I was born, so I'd never seen anyone go through it before, and my mother never let on that anything was different with her, so it just wasn't on my radar. If someone had told me my mother was having hot flashes, I would have cheerfully put on a sweater and cranked up the air conditioning so my mother could be comfortable, and I would have perceived my father as a loving husband. But instead, I obliviously ran around resetting thermostats for my own comfort, thereby inadvertently making my mother uncomfortable, and at the same time concluded that my father was being a contrary butthole. I've been going to this gym for 5 years and I never noticed this freaking hose people use to refill their water bottles. Reddit. Like, it's filled with so much helpful forums, active communities, and entertainment. I was like, WTF. I thought this was just some weird website filled with redirect links and tiny pictures. During this time last year I was happily going to work because I was told a raise promotion was coming soon. On top of that, I was happy going to work because I actually cared about my co-workers and saw some of them as actual friends. Eventually, I got tired of being overworked, underpaid, and I was mentally physically exhausted. It also didn't help that a physical problem started to get worse, which was a result of me constantly working my butt off. If left untreated, I would have developed chronic lower back pain, and I'm just now getting over it, nearly 2 years since it initially started. It was towards the end of February when I realized that me busting my butt wasn't worth it, even if I did care about my co-workers and I knew they relied on me. It was only after I quit my job that people started to let me know that they had a feeling that things would end up that way. I wish they would have said something to me while I was still working there, but I doubt I'll ever know why they didn't say something along the lines of "you're being played, look for a new job or try to figure something out." That you can have grey hair downstairs before you ever get it upstairs. OMG, there's an old lady living in my underwear. I need to get this off my chest, because I finally bought some this morning and realized it doesn't work at all like I thought it did. I believed that when you bought gold, you have like unlimited gold to gift to posters. Like if you saw something really funny or a post you loved a whole lot, if you were subscribed, you could give gold as a way to show, this guy knows where it's at. Like, I thought you'd be a gifter of gold, and that you wouldn't run out of gold to give until your subscription was up. I feel so dumb after purchasing this morning. I was really excited to start just handing out gold here and there, but then realized I have to pay each time to do so. But now I realize if someone gives you gold, they're literally paying out of their pockets to show you and everyone else how much meaning your post had to them. Definitely means a lot more to me now than it did before. Now knowing this, still, kinda do wish we had unlimited gold. I think it would be a lot of fun. You can have unlimited gold, you just need unlimited money, or sweet talk and admin. I was 19 when I left for college. My overprotective father was trying to drill any last minute life tips into my head that he could before I left. Like don't answer the door if you're home alone and never forget to turn off the stove. Things like that. I moved into an apartment a short bus ride from campus, and on one of my first days living on my own I wanted to go to the school gym. The bus stop was right outside my apartment and I was told by my roommate any bus would take me right to the stop I needed. I had never taken public transportation before, because, you know, overprotective father. But hey, how hard could it be? So I march my happy butt down to the bus stop and get on the first bus that shows up. The bus stops at each of the stops between my apartment and the school gym and people get on and off. Everything is seeming to go as planned. The bus begins to approach the stop that I need and I prepare to end what was my first ride on public transportation. However, the bus isn't stopping at my stop the way it did at all the others. My anxiety starts to kick and as we pass the school gym I begin to panic. I'm looking around and no one else seems to be worried, so I just sit there and wonder what the heck I'm going to do. A couple minutes later, a boy sitting a few rows ahead of me lifts up his arm and pulls a yellow cord running along the side of the bus. It makes a bell noise and the bus stops at the upcoming stop. I practically run off of the bus and immediately take out my phone to call my dad. I know how to lock my doors and turn off the stove, Dad, but why the heck didn't anyone tell me to pull the cord if I needed to get off the bus? Lul. I was in martial arts. I had problems with my toenails splitting. Were given advice to use nail polish, so I go and buy black. Worked like a charm. I was teased about it but never cared. I finally respond, what color would you prefer for me to wear? Bright pink? This is when I was told you can get clear. That you can make 65k driving truck, 140k for a team. Great idea for newlyweds. Spend 3 years driving together, living in the truck, extended working honeymoon, seeing the country. At the end, if you haven't killed each other, you can pay cash for a house and declare the roughest part of the marriage behind you. Not shaving at all. All the time I wasted shaving. All of the awful razor burn. All of the money spent on shaving cream and a razor. Nope, never again. I make my own sugar wax. It's cheap. It's long lasting and wax is more effective in terms of time and money. I just wax for summer and trim the rest of the year. This I will never change. Took me way too long to realize you weren't talking about a beard. That the N-word was as big of no-no as it is. I'm a white guy that grew up in a mostly white rural community. I grew up watching classic comedians that I really looked up to. People like Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock. These guys were my heroes and they used it for humor, and I saw no difference between them and myself. I never used the word in a hateful way, and always knew it was offensive, but I'd only ever say it to make jokes. Not even racist jokes, more to try to take some of the racist power away from it. Didn't figure just how wrong my thinking was until I was 25 and lost a permanent federal job because of it. Lesson learned. I never meant to hurt anyone, and I think that point was conveyed, but policy is policy. I was about 5 or 6 when my dad very seriously said never say the N-word. When I asked why, he said just don't. I have no clue what prompted that conversation, but 35 years later it stayed with me. Back in high school, I started dating this girl from another school that would come into my work. We never actually really did anything as a couple except make out in the mall. When we broke up, all of my co-workers who went to her school had reactions like oh thank god or dude finally, so I asked why they all said that, and that's when I found out that she sold BJ's at lunch. So that was a bummer to find out. I spent 2 months making out with a mouth H. Some books have marks for where the chapters begin. You can see on the outer edge of the page. I'm 37 years old and an avid reader. My boyfriend just showed me it exists about a week ago. Shorts feel great in the summer. I'm 27 and my entire life I wore nothing but long pants. I never understood why anyone would ever wear shorts. I thought they were impractical. They don't cover anything up. If you bump your leg while you work, you're going to get scraped. If you work outside, you'll get your legs all scratched up by small bushes and plants. Then my mom gave me a nice pair of cargo shorts on a whim. When I walked outside, it changed my life. It was a hot summer day and I was actually comfortable. In 27 years I never realized shorts could make such a huge difference. I like shorts. They're comfy and easy to wear. Pokemon battle music starts. Farm fresh eggs. Didn't have one until I was 35. Subsequently called my parents to demand an explanation. Same goes for fresh versus canned pineapple. The difference is astounding. Recently had farm fresh eggs after 6 decades of life. Now I plan to get me some chickens. When I was young I had a Game Boy Advance and every time it died or I had to charge it I would turn it completely off and plug it in. Until one day my cousin came over and was playing my Game Boy and the battery was getting low. She just plugged it in the wall and continued playing. I had no idea that was possible. My biggest moment was when my missus lost a baby. The nurse told us 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. I had no idea. One of my favorite bands has a remix version of one of their albums on Spotify. Since 2015, I haven't used Spotify that much in a few years, so I just noticed a few days ago. We wear these horrible ugly uniforms at work. I try not to complain, as they are fairly comfortable and hide my body from the many perverts on site. We were due to get new uniforms, with our names stitched and all that fancy stuff. I noticed a rack of uniforms sitting in the break room for a few days, but didn't think much of it. The day after the uniforms were removed, a co-worker asked if I had tried on the uniform sizes. Cue my look of confusion and a roundabout conversation, leading to the realization that I was supposed to figure out what size my 16 uniforms needed to be. Nobody mentioned anything about it to me, including my supervisor. The uniforms were supposed to arrive yesterday, but I wasn't working, so I don't know what is waiting for me next time I go in. Anyway, that's my why did nobody tell me until after the trial uniforms were gone moment. That red delicious and Granny Smith apples are not what apples should taste like. These are all I had growing up. Honey Crisp apples have been a revelation. I struggled with reading in grade high school but did well enough in math to try out junior college. During the first 2 weeks of college, my English 060 professor identified me as having dyslexia. She taught me strategies and showed me the free resources on campus. Today I'm working on my PhD dissertation. Breastfeeding. All women I talked to said it was so calming to the baby, natural, helped them bond, and that overall it was a beautiful experience. The first 2 weeks were the worst of my life. It felt like glass on my nipples and the baby never seemed to be full, but there was this weird pressure from women I've never met, the lactation consultants, and even some family members that breastfeeding was the only option. The moment I introduced the bottle was this weird sense of guilt and relief, but I feel like it made me a better mom because I wasn't so fearful of every time she was hungry. A month into it, it wasn't torture, but it remained a chore. Then, when I told other women about how much I disliked it, they would suddenly remember how much of a chore it was too. It is a great experience and I do love the way my daughter will turn to my breast for comfort. At the same time, though, it takes a lot of time, energy, and even sometimes tears to get it right. Next time don't be afraid to cow up and pump that crap. It's easier on both you and the baby, and then your husband can breastfeed in the middle of the night, too. What a period is. I'm sitting in my sister's middle school graduation when I feel this rush like I peed myself. Ran to the bathroom and lo and behold, I'm dying. Blood everywhere. Oh hey, that's normal apparently. Women do this once a month and somehow no one ever mentioned anything to me, including my mother and 2 sisters. Lovely. Grew up in a very sheltered religious home where we didn't talk about anything. I never knew anything about that either. When I first got it, I told my sister and she told mom. Sis just gave me some always book and a pad and that's it. Before that I had no idea that women even bleed downstairs. Knew about pads, but had no idea what they were for. We learned more about it in school. Nasal spray. I spent my whole childhood being sick and was never given any medicine except Tylenol for fever, or when I hit mid-teens, some Mucinex. My immune system is still a wet paper bag to this day and colds are heck. At 21 years old, I was sick, and my husband brought home nasal spray for me to try. I figured it couldn't hurt, so why not? Oh my god, I could breathe through my nose. I was taking actual breaths. I wasn't gasping, it wasn't hurting. I could even sleep like this. My mind was blown, and I was so relieved I legit started crying. Why didn't anyone ever give me this? All the wasted years. My ex was doing H. I had my suspicions and I was nosing, but after someone told me I left him and never looked back. His mom messaged me a few months ago because he died from an overdose. So I dodged a bullet to say the least. Oh frick. That's awful. H isn't anything to frick around with. I didn't know that mag wheels stood for magnesium alloy wheels, and I didn't figure it out until I watched a blaxploitation film starring Pam Grier where a kid called the fancy rims on her muscle car mag wheels and she corrected him saying it's magnesium alloy, young man, and I'm like, holy crap, I had no idea. Having a dog. It's even better than people say, because they just love you so much and they're so genuinely happy to see you all the time. I wish I had a friend like that growing up. I help out at my church's Sunday school. I once had to escort a kid to his class. He told me he was over 6 years old, but I kid you not, he looked like a 4-year-old. His older brother was with me and didn't tell me anything when I questioned his age and decided he belonged with the little kids. I didn't notice when he started crying, as he, apparently, is bullied a lot in school for his size. I stared daggers at his brother after noticing and took the kid to his age group. For years when cooking spaghetti I drop the sticks in the middle and they lay against the side of the pot getting slightly scorched until they eventually droop into the water. Once they're cooked I often find the strands annoyingly long and liable to flick sauce on me. Now I just hold a bunch of them in 2 hands, crack them in half and drop them in the water. No more scorching, and they're a better length for eating. This is how my family prepared spaghetti growing up. However, this is like a cardinal sin to my wife. She, and of course now me too, uses a spoon to twirl the pasta in the plate for each bite before eating it, so no sauce flicking. But I'm with you, crack that pasta. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.